Good evening. This evening, we will hear the last major composition created in the concentration camps during the Holocaust. Dr. Phil Bowman is a Ludwig Rosenberger Distinguished Service Professor of Music and the Humanities at the University of Chicago. His teaching and research draw upon the diverse methods and perspectives in the music scholarship. The study of Jewish music in modernity has provided a primary focus for his research for 35 years, and since 1998 has provided the context for his activities as a performer, both as the artistic director of the new Budapest Orpheum Society and in stage performances with Christine Wilkie Bowman. His current research includes an introduction to the study of ethnomusicology for Cambridge University Press and a book on music and global nationalism, for which he received the 2013 John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Fellowship. His work in historical performance has been recognized with the Noah Greenberg Award for the American Musicology Society and the Donald Tovey Prize from Oxford University. Christine Wilkie Bowman is lecturer in piano and chamber music in the College at the University of Chicago. She specializes in the performance of chamber music from the 18th and the 20th centuries. She is also co-recipient of the Donald Tovey Memorial Prize from Oxford University for her performance of music from the Holocaust. It's my privilege to present Dr. Bowman and Christine Wilkie Bowman.
Thank you very much, Paul. Those are very kind words. It's wonderful to be here tonight, and it's a very special privilege for us to have this opportunity to perform for you and to speak with you, to share a remarkable experience of music with you. I want to begin with some words of thanks myself. The moment we walked into Bet Shira this afternoon, Rabbi Kula was such a wonderful host, and we really thank him for this wonderful opportunity. And bringing us here was Dr. Corinne Duffy, who has a certain relationship with Rabbi Kula, as many of you know. And it was just a terrific chance to speak with her students this afternoon, many of whom are here tonight, and we really appreciate your taking time from a busy class schedule to come with us. I also want to thank Deborah Schwartz-Cates and Phil Cates as well, and for a very, very special reason. We actually met when doing research in 2004 in Basel, Switzerland, which is a place where music from the 20th century is kept in an archive, and we were all doing various things there, and we started to talk and really got to know each other and developed a friendship from that. And this piece that you're hearing tonight was the subject of my research in Basel. So it's a wonderful opportunity for me also to share that, and also the experience of learning and talking together with those people who really care about such music. Let me say a little bit about how we're organized tonight. I'm going to speak a little bit. Musicologists do this, we do this. This is part of what we do. But I'm going to speak about the arts, and I'm going to speak about poetry and song. So it's not really a lecture. I mean, you don't have to take notes or anything like that. But I also want to share with you this experience of literature, of poetry that was created in the concentration camps, that survived in one way or another, maybe in the case of this piece, to end up in an archive in Basel where I could work with the sketches, for example. It's largely literature and music I think most of you have never heard before. And I don't want to defend it in this sense, but rather ask you to recognize and celebrate what great art it is. It is with music and poetry that I search for a place in my reflections on the arts and aesthetics of the Holocaust this evening. The rhythm and meter of poetry afford me with a sense of time. The melodic path of music affords me a sense of place. The songs and poetry I weave together this evening intone the temporal beginning and ending that formed an aesthetic of journey and tragedy through Jewish music from the rise of modernity in the Jewish Enlightenment, the Haskalah, through the era of fascism and Holocaust that provides the themes and variations for our performance this evening of Viktor Ullmann and Rainer Maria Rilke's The Chronicle of the Love and Death of the Flag Bearer Christoph Rilke. The aesthetic with which I concern myself this evening is that of music dislodged from time and place. It is an aesthetic that depends on time itself, the paradox of sustaining time in order to reflect upon its ending, the end of time. It is an aesthetic of searching but not finding. Let us begin by listening to Hans-Günther Adler's poetic invoicement of the journey to and beyond the concentration camp at Theresienstadt, or Terezín as it's called in the Czech language. From Adler's great novel of the camp, Eine Reise, the journey, I'll read. So this is a novel that was written by a friend, I'll say more about him, and fellow survivor from Terezín, and you'll be able to read his German here, but I've translated it into English for you. The station master's youngest daughter appeared with a candle at the windowsill in a flowery white nightgown. She gazed at the confusion below and began to sing her evening song. I've sounded it. The long journey is over. A train has arrived. The travelers now rest. Lord, let me go to sleep. The course is rightly set. Look graciously after the next train. Until the end of the world, good night, good night. Until the end of the world, may thanks be given to you. As the little girl sang, everything was still for one moment, but now she's gone again, and she has taken the candlelight with her. This is from H.G. Adler's novel, The Journey, which has now appeared recently in a wonderful translation by Peter Filkins, and I highly recommend that novel to you. It's written by a survivor allegorically about his own experiences. Hans-Günther Adler is one of several artists, musicians, and intellectuals from Terezín whose work I'd like us to experience this evening. Born and raised in the Czech German-speaking Jewish community of Prague, Adler took his PhD in musicology from the Charles University of Prague, but never practiced musicology professionally, prevented as he was from doing so by the German occupiers of the city and the Holocaust. In Terezín and then later as a survivor in London, Adler worked in many areas as an intellectual and writer, arguably, however, never truly finding his home, remaining always in search of an elusive place to call his artistic home, as he called it. That journey was already evident in a poetry that both remembered and did not remember the experience of the concentration camp. This is a poem called In Search Of. Driven away and an hour still not entirely far away, the waiting room is completely swept. Still no one lingers there. Shame, base hunger becomes intolerable. The innkeeper hands the bill payer the chilly hand of a brother. Warm towels help not at all. The house is empty. In the basement, there's no wine. Thus the searched search, and thus search searched, thus be searched, thus be searched, thus search searched, thus search. Why do they have nothing? They do have something. Why? If they only could have it. Are they sated? Hopefulness lingers about. Still, no one speaks a word about it. They approach sorrow. Only one corner left, behind which there are also dreams and blindly expectant shadows. The time now found has long accompanied the heart that is lost. These are the final two stanzas. To realize this aesthetic of transcendence, to make its suspended reality real for you, I weave together songs and poems rich in musical metaphor, indeed so fertile with musical metaphor as to yield to beginning at the moment of ending at the end of the day. I sample and mix the songs and musical fragments, weaving them together performatively so that they can comment upon each other, call and response, point and counterpoint. Journey as metaphor and in musical metaphor may seem at first glance exceptional, marking the existential experience of existence itself in a concentration camp. We follow another aesthetic path this evening, intentionally realizing journey in a different way. Musically, that is, as the musical chronicle of a texture formed from transcendence and the everyday. Music intones the journey of transcendence. It sets its beginning in motion even when arrival at the eschatological moment seems most assumed, when it seems like only the end is possible. Let me read of the irony of the arrival in Terezin, here in a text by Leo Strauss, not the political philosopher from the University of Chicago, rather a cabaret player from Vienna. Leo Strauss, whose cabaret songs connect him to the family tradition of Oskar Strauss, itself connected to the cabaret works of Arnold Schoenberg at the beginning of the 20th century and Gerhard Bronner at the beginning of the 21st. I'm going to read a poem that was a cabaret song, actually, a text, which survives only as a text from Terezin by Leo Strauss. There were 9 cabarets in the camp, 7 that used the German language and 2 that used the Czech language. And Leo Strauss, as one of the great composers of the 20th century of cabaret music, wrote this invitation. Dear friends, just for a moment tell yourself that everything may not be as you think it is. If it's not as cozy at home as it might be, then come on in. Just join me for a while. If everyday worries are worrying on you, if you can barely keep your head above water, here you'll find a safe haven from all that. So come on in. Just join me for a while. If by chance you have some debts, perhaps the seamstress is beginning to threaten. Maybe the bartender can't wait any longer. Come on in. Spend some time with me. You say you can't find work, and you've looked everywhere in vain? Well then, don't give up all hope. Come on in. Spend some time with me. You're threatened by losses on the stock market. The maid wants to quit. Both the nanny and the butler have had enough. Come on in. Spend some time with me. If you want to visit the coffee house, if the cabaret might be your thing, if you'd like to see the Strauss Ensemble performing, come on in. We're at your service. All your cares will disappear here in this beautiful little space. But you need to keep one thing in mind, just how you can get out of here. These are the closing verses. In Terezin, music, poetry, and theater were interwoven as a performative fabric, a curtain raised from the stage of the everyday. The world behind the curtain was all too cruelly familiar. And I want to let you experience this world in a poem, a cabaret song, called "And the Music Played Along." Und die Musik spielt dazu. It's a poem by Walter Lindenbaum, and music by Freddie Raimund. These are texts largely, we don't have the music. They survive only as texts. They were improvised on the stage themselves. I love infernally all those who musically create joy and give pause through music, striking even at the most evil heart. Still, those who are quick end up in hell, which is the pit for the orchestra. And to this end, let me cite Shakespeare, Much Ado About Nothing. At the outset, everyone's together, so the director leads off. At the end, he's standing there alone, conducting only for himself. And the audience stands around, the drum roaring boom-de-boom-boom, while a little kid cries out, "I gotta go!" And the music plays along. One bangs out the meter on the soup bowl. Instead of soup, though, there's extractive music. The town square is the center of everything. And the music plays along. The tuba, the baritone, the saxophone, the accordion, the beat must be firm, for that's what makes it sound right. Still, at the last moment, someone toots away, and one doesn't allow for any peace and quiet. And the music plays along. Whether Meyerbeer, whether Mozart, everything sounds so gentle to us, for in this place a forte is taboo. The music here is chronic, many live disharmonic. They're not accustomed, alas, to playing together, for everyone wants to show they can play first fiddle. Everyone is a conductor, at the very least, a famous one. And the music plays along. There were famous conductors, by the way, in Terezin. Music and poetry aspire to become one in this Terezin by Walter Lindenbaum, which survives in the typescript, noting only that it was performed to music by Freddie Raimund. We hear and listen to the poetry. We hear of and listen for the music. We witness the experience of a Terezin concert from a distance, drawing closer because of what was sounded, but what reaches us only as traces of rhythm and echoes of history. The act of drawing closer to this poem and song is an act of seeking to heal the wounded state of its survival and to lessen its chronicling of tragedy. As we make it a performance act, even as I sounded in my introduction this evening, we act upon, and the music played along, as translators, hearing and listening, reading and singing, sounding and healing. I want to sing a song for you. One of the oldest Jewish songs from the Middle Ages, at least. We have it from the 14th century already in a great manuscript collection of songs called the Glogauer Liederbuch. But I'm going to sing it in a version collected from two Holocaust survivors, Luisa and Mina Federspiel, who are from Western Austria, the Lake Constance area. It's a song about survival in a way, but eventual death. It's a ballad, a folk song. Es war einmal a Jöden, a wunderschönes Weib, die hatte eine Tochter, zum Tod war sie bereit. Die hatte eine Tochter, zum Tod war sie bereit. Ach, Mutter, liebste Mutter, mir tut der Kopf so weh, lass mich eine kleine Weile spazieren gehen an See. Lass mich eine kleine Weile spazieren gehen am See. Ach, Tochter, liebste Tochter, allein darfst du nicht gehen. Sagst deinem Elternbröderlein, er wird schon mit dir gehen. Sagst deinem Elternbröderlein, er wird schon mit dir gehen. Da gab sie ihm ein Ringlein aus allerfeinstem Gold. Da gab sie ihm ein Ringlein, das soll dein eigen sein. Da gab sie ihm ein Ringlein, das soll dein eigen sein. And then the final verse, a verse in which unrequited love of the Jewish woman leads her to take her own life. Dann stieg sie auf die Mauer, stürzte hinab in den kühlen See. Leb wohl, du liebe Heimat, wir sehen uns nimmermehr. Leb wohl, du liebste Heimat, wir sehen uns nimmermehr. These are the final verses. Music mobilizes the journey into exile by juxtaposing the everyday and the telos evoked by the end of time. So we have here, everything I'm doing tonight is an allegory about journey toward an end. And the piece that we'll perform in a moment is also a long journey. More about that in a moment. Time and timelessness in such journeys become interdependent. Ending and beginning become one. Accordingly, we find a proliferation of songs about journey in the aesthetics responding to Holocaust. Songs of exile resist the journey beyond the homeland, coming to rest only through exile. Victor Ullmann was also a poet, and he, in addition to being a composer, and I want to read now one of his poems to give you a sense of his own poetic voice, and you will realize it's an incredible poetic voice as well. And I'm going to read a poem called The Chor unseliger Knaben, the chorus of the wretched boys, also written in Terezin. You are the sun, and we are the earth. To us, those surrounded you, offer the gift of becoming something. Yet our paths already lead us away. Bright is the sun, but dark are the misgivings. How you take away the path and then disappear, realizing yourself as released from the world. Leaving us to the devastating difficulty of the winter, showing us that fate leads to emptiness. Now the deathly wounds bleed again. Angels bind them. They are bound faithfully to you. I wish to conclude, or rather move through a moment of poetic transit with three poems, two by H.G. Adler, whom we met at the beginning of my introduction this evening, and the third by Victor Ullmann. The three are joined, translated into stretto by music. Ullmann indeed set two of Adler's poems, Immer inmitten and Vor der Ewigkeit, which together became a cantata for mezzo-soprano and piano. My group and I have recorded this on a CD, these two songs. The themes of both could not be more richly symbolic of journeys and the transcendent, and it is hard to imagine that Ullmann did not realize these qualities when he voiced Adler's exiled language with song in the closing moments of his life. Do these poems already presage my own indebtedness to the journeys Adler chronicled? For it was he who rescued, it was Adler who rescued the fragments of the Ullmann score upon which our performance of the Chronicle of Love and Death of the flag bearer Christoph Rilke is based. It was his act returning from Buchenwald to Terezin. So let me read this poem, which was then set by H.G. Adler, by Victor Ullmann. Forever on the way, walking through all the magical regions, far from home, still near to where I came from, all that the soul has not suffered, soon to be soothed in moss, soon ripped by thorns, forever on the way. Forever on the way. Forever on the way. Forever on the way. Between despondence and lustful wishes, the human finds herself in the house of salvation. Slowly she forgets why she quarreled, coming once to a ghostly end. Forever on the way. Forever on the way. Forever on the way. Forever on the way. Death rides sleepily into life. Crackling melody, strangling, rattling, no one can say what morning will become. Forever on the way, forever on the way. And finally, and now Adler's second poem called Vor der Ewigkeit, Before Eternity. Again, one of the texts that Victor Ullmann set. What things belong to this world? What is reality? Which passions are painfully kindled, so that pride suddenly crumbles. Who may make colorful pictures for himself? What have we done that passion accompanies so much suffering, and we awaken only as the dead? It is not clear how to make measure of that which we have made murky. If we could only feel that life beyond ourselves and not in the lessening danger. Who will lead us to our own hearth, to the wonderful home, to the womb where our passion truly drives itself to touch upon eternity? Eternity detours through us, building for us a kingdom. How it swirls inside us and breaks down the proudest dikes, and how it rises powerfully within us to level all that would compare until death denies and makes sacred. All the whispers of this world, and sleepily covers them with a blow. Hans Günther Adler's journey translated into song, but song that reaches the end only by reckoning with the pain of living, which cruelly transcends even the tragedy of death, which is the subject of Victor Ullmann's 1943 opera in Terezin, Der Kaiser von Atlantis, the Emperor of Atlantis. Can that pain be fully reconciled through song? Such is the question that Victor Ullmann, the poet, puts to music. Is the fullness of stretto, of music and poetry intertwined in the common act of performing, ultimately a witness to an emptiness? With that question, Victor Ullmann ends his translation of Rilke's poetry, the Chronicle of Love and Death of the flag bearer Christoph Rilke, which Christine and I perform this evening. From that question issues Ullmann's own voice as a poet, singing of the immortality that joins ultimately, tragically, only with mortality. I close this part of the program with one final performative moment, ending as I began, thereby recognizing the moment of transcendence between mortality and immortality. I end with Victor Ullmann's poem, "The deepest pain cannot become music, in which he sings the end of the life journey of exile into being through music. Der tiefste Schmerz kann zu Musik nicht werden. The deepest pain cannot become music. No word alters that pain. It does not assume its shape from the rock of the earth. It remains in muffled silence. Thus I bear silent sadness about the saddening silence that I missed. And it is silent, that it only hums what I dreamed. The deepest pain cannot go back into the farthest time. It strikes the wounds that now deadly burn. It has passed. So we now turn to the piece itself that we're performed tonight. I want to say just a little bit about it. You have a description of it, and you have the text. If you don't have a text, please get one. There will also be text here with each of the scenes complete. So I'll be turning the slides so that you can see that. It's important to understand this beautiful poetry. It's a remarkable poem by one of the great poets, Rainer Maria Rilke, himself also a Czech who was a German speaker. And it was for this reason, this incredible poem, this was the first volume in one of the most important literary series that still exists today called the Inselbücherei, the Insel Press book series. And this was number one. It appeared in 1912. And what we know from talking with the survivors of the camp is that they knew this poetry. They had copies of the poetry with them. And it was for that reason that Ullmann, also a Czech, chose this music. And he chose it in a genre called the melodrama, which is particularly important in the Czech lands. So it's a piece for music and for speaker. And this is what we call a melodrama. The story, again, takes place at the end of the 30 Years' War as the Central European forces, the Habsburg armies from Austria, were marching into Eastern Europe against the Ottoman Empire. And Christoph Rilke, the hero of our story, whose journey we follow in a love death, in a Liebestod, that's what this is what it is. He's fascinated. He falls in love with the prospects of war, to go off and be famous and do wonderful things and meet great people. And suddenly, he encounters the reality of the war. This piece was written between July and September 27th, 1944. Ullmann was composing it. We have in the Basel sketches. He knows he's going to be taken to Auschwitz. He didn't know when. So he composes this piece faster and faster and faster, throwing the text on the page. He finally finishes the sketches on September 27th, and he dates them. And then on October 10th, he is deported to Auschwitz and killed, murdered on arrival, on October 16th. So this is a work in which he actually composes allegorically the moment of his own approaching death. So we do perform it in German, and so you have the English translations and several variants. Den 24. November 1663 wurde Otto von Rilke auf Langenau, Grenitz und Zieger zu Linde mit seines in Ungarn gefallenen Bruders Christoph hinterlassenem Anteile am Gute Linde beliehen. Doch musste er einen Revers ausstellen, nach welchem die Lehensreichung null und nichtig sein sollte. Im Falle sein Bruder Christoph, der nach beigebrachtem Totenschein als Kornett in der Kompanie des Freiherrn von Pieroveno, des kaiserlich-österreichisch-heistischen Regiments zu Ross verstorben war, zurückkehrt. Reiten, reiten, reiten. Durch den Tag, durch die Nacht, durch den Tag. Reiten, reiten, reiten. Und der Mut ist so müde geworden und die Sehnsucht so groß. Es gibt keine Berge mehr, kaum einen Baum. Nichts wagt aufzustehen. Fremde Hütten hocken durstig an versumpften Brunnen. Nirgends ein Turm und immer das gleiche Bild. Man hat zwei Augen zu viel. Nur in der Nacht manchmal glaubt man, den Weg zu kennen. Vielleicht kehren wir nächtens immer wieder das Stück zurück, das wir in der fremden Sonne mühsam gewonnen haben. Es kann sein. Die Sonne ist schwer, wie bei uns tief im Sommer. Aber wir haben im Sommer Abschied genommen. Die Kleider der Frauen leuchteten lang aus dem Grün. Und nun reiten wir lang. Es muss also Herbst sein. Wenigstens dort, wo traurige Frauen von uns wissen. Jemand erzählt von seiner Mutter. Ein Deutscher offenbar. Laut und langsam setzt er seine Worte. Wie ein Mädchen, das Blumen bindet, nachdenklich Blume um Blume probt und noch nicht weiß, was aus dem Ganzen wird. So fügte seine Worte zu Lust, zu Leide, Alle lauschen. Sogar das Spucken hört auf. Denn es sind lauter Herren, die wissen, was sich gehört. Und wer das Deutsche nicht kann in den Haufen, der versteht es auf einmal, füllt einzelne Worte. Abends. Klein war. Da sind sie alle einander nah, diese Herren, die aus Frankreich kommen und aus Burgund, aus den Niederlanden, aus Kärntens Tälern, von den böhmischen Burgen und vom Kaiser Leopold. Denn was der eine erzählt, das haben auch sie erfahren. Und gerade so. Als ob es nur eine Mutter gäbe. Ein Tag durch den Trost, Flöße, Farben, Lachen, davon blendet das Land. Kommen bunte Buben gelaufen, raufen und rufen. Kommen Dirnen mit Purpurnenhüten im flutenden Haar. Winken. Kommen Knechte Schwarzeisen wie wandernde Nacht, packen die Dirnen heiß, dass ihnen die Kleider zerreißen, drücken sie an den Trommelrand. Und von der wilderen Gegenwehr hastiger Hände werden die Trommeln wach. Wie im Traum polten sie, polten, und abends halten sie im Laternenherd. Seltsamer Wein leuchtet in eisernen Hauben. Oder Blut. Wer kann's unterscheiden? Der von Langenau schreibt einen Brief, ganz in Gedanken. Langsam malt er mit großen, ernsten, aufrechten Lettern. Meine gute Mutter, seid stolz, ich trage die Fahne. Seid ohne Sorge, ich trage die Fahne, habt mich lieb, ich trage die Fahne. Dann steckt er den Brief zu sich in den Waffenrock, an die heiligste Stelle. Und denkt, vielleicht findet ihn einmal einer. Und denkt, denn der Feind ist nah. Sie reiten über einen erschlagenen Bauern. Er hat die Augen weit offen und etwas spiegelt sich drin. Kein Himmel. Später heulen Hunde. Es kommt also ein Dorf. Endlich. Und über den Hütten steigt steinern ein Schloss. Breit hält sich ihnen die Brücke hin. Groß wird das Tor. Hochwill kommt das Horn. Horch. Pulten, Klirren und Hundegebell. Wehren im Hof Hufschlag und Ruf. So we've reached the halfway point in the journey. Gustav Rilke has been mustered with his army. He's gone, he's joined the forces. They've ridden off. You can hear the soldiers, the horses gathering and the celebrations as they get ready to go into war. We now come to part two, where there's the second part of the two parts. Gustav Rilke, with his fellow soldiers, will spend evenings before the battles actually begin. And he experiences love for the first time. He experiences love in a dream. He falls in love with a woman. And as he awakens from the dream, it becomes the case that the woman is actually the flag that he bears into battle. And that takes him to the battle, and eventually he dies with the woman, the flag, in his hand in an act of love. Rast. Gast sein einmal. Nicht immer selbst seine Wünsche bewirten mit kärglicher Kost. Nicht immer feindlich nach allem fassen. Einmal sich alles geschehen lassen und wissen, was geschieht, ist gut. Nicht immer Soldat sein, einmal die Locken offen tragen und den weiten offenen Kragen und in seidenen Sesseln sitzen und bis in die Fingerspitzen nach dem Bad sein. Und wieder erst lernen, was Frauen sind. Und wie die Weißen sind. Und wie die Blauen sind. Was für Hände sie haben, wie sie ihr Lachen singen. Wenn blonde Knaben die schönen Schalen bringen, von saftigen Früchten schwer. Als Mahl begann's und ist ein Fest geworden. Kaum weiß man wie, die hohen Flammen flacken, die Stimmen schwirrten, wirre Lieder klirrten aus Glas und Glanz. Und endlich aus den reif gewordenen Takten entsprang der Tanz und alle riss er hin. Das war ein Wellenschlagen in den Sälen, ein sich begegnen und ein sich erwählen, ein Abschied nehmen und ein Wiederfinden, ein Glanz genießen und ein Licht erblinden und ein sich wiegen in den Sommerwinden. Die in den Kleidern warme Frauen sind. Aus dunklem Wein und 1000 Rosen rinnt die Stunde rauschend in der Traum der Nacht. Einer, der weiße Seide trägt, erkennt, dass er nicht erwachen kann, denn er ist wach und verwirrt von Wirklichkeit. So flieht er bang in den Traum und steht im Park, einsam im schwarzen Park. Und das Fest ist fern und das Licht lügt und die Nacht ist nah um ihn und kühl. Und er fragt seine Frau, die sich zu ihm neigt: Bist du die Nacht? Sie lächelt und da schämt er sich für sein weißes Kleid. Und möchte weit und allein und in Waffen sein. Ganz in Waffen. Die Turmstube ist dunkel, aber sie läusen sich ins Gesicht mit ihrem Lächeln. Sie tasten vor sich her wie Blinde und finden den anderen wie eine Tür. Fast wie Kinder, die sich vor der Nacht ängstigen, drängen sie sich ineinander ein. Und doch fürchten sie sich nicht. Da ist nichts, was gegen sie wäre. Kein Gestern, kein Morgen, denn die Zeit ist eingestürzt. Und sie blühen aus ihren Trümmern. Er fragt nicht: Dein Gemahl? Sie fragt nicht: Dein Namen? Sie haben sich ja gefunden, um einander ein neues Geschlecht zu sein. Sie werden sich 100 neue Namen geben und einander alle wieder abnehmen. Leise, wie man einen Ohrring abnimmt. Ist das der Morgen? Welche Sonne geht auf? Wie groß ist die Sonne? Sind das Vögel? Ihre Stimmen sind überall. Alles ist hell, aber es ist kein Tag. Alles ist laut, aber es sind nicht Vogelstimmen. Das sind die Balken, die leuchten. Das sind die Fenster, die schreien. Und sie schreien rot in die Feinde hinein, die draußen stehen im flackernden Land, schreiend Brand und mit zerrissenem Schlaf im Gesicht drängen sich alle, halb eisen, halb nackt, von Zimmer zu Zimmer, von Trakt zu Trakt und suchen die Treppe. Und mit verschlagenem Atem stammen Hörner im Hof. Sammeln und bebende Trommeln. Aber die Fahne ist nicht dabei. Rufe, Kornett! Rasende Pferde, Gebete, Geschrei. Flüche, Kornett! Eisen an Eisen, Befehl und Signal. Stille. Kornett! Noch einmal Kornett! Und heraus mit der brausenden Reiterei! Aber die Fahne ist nicht dabei. Er läuft um die Wette mit brennenden Gängen, durch Türen, die ihn glühend umdrängen, über Treppen, die ihn versengen, bricht er aus dem rasenden Bau. Auf seinen Armen trägt er die Fahne wie eine weiße, bewusstlose Frau und er findet ein Pferd und es ist wie ein Schrei über alles dahin und an allem vorbei, auch an den Seinen. Und da kommt auch die Fahne wieder zu sich und niemals war sie so königlich. Und jetzt sehen sie alle fern voran und erkennen den hellen, helmlosen Mann und erkennen die Fahne. Aber da fängt sie zu scheinen an, wirft sich hinaus und wird groß und rot. Da brennt ihre Fahne mitten im Feind und sie jagen ihr nach. Im nächsten Frühjahr, es kam traurig und kalt, ritt ein Kurier des Freiherrn von Piroweno langsam in Langenau ein. Dort hat er eine alte Frau weinen sehen. That's
Thank you very much. Your reading was music. Did Victor Ullmann annotate the reading as well, in the German, of course, or was that Philip Ullmann?
yes to both questions. So one of the things that as he wrote this faster and faster, he simply put text at the top of the movement. And one of the things we have to do is figure out where it fits. I think one of the things that's obvious to you is that there's this, what we call word painting. In other words, when everybody heard that the birds were singing, right? I mean, there was no question about that. There are things like that. There's a very simple of the poetry, for example, in some ways. But a lot of work we have to figure out. We feel that we've honored the poet and the composer in placing the text where we have. We're going to do a recording of this. Yeah.
Working with the idea of they were dealing with a speaking voice, and Schoenberg, for example, was working with what they call Sprechstimme, where it's a spoken voice, but the rhythm is notated very precisely. This is not the case here. This is a spoken voice, and you have to figure out where he puts it. And you can really see from the sketches and from the score here that in the beginning movements, he was very careful in placing the words, but toward the end, there were like 5 lines over 5 lines of text over 3 measures of prestissimo. You know, it's like you couldn't possibly get all the words in time unless even playing it langsam. So, you know, he obviously just ran out of time, and I would like to ask him a lot of questions about it, actually, if he were to have survived.
Professor Goldman, I found your remarks to be very moving. I was very struck by the pathos of these years. I'm co-chair of the Sacred Israel Institute, who replaces Zuni's Never Again is now buttons on the refreshment table. Every so often we get out and have pro-Israel rallies out on Veterans Wayside Park on 12th Street at Dixie Highway or Christian Mansion. So if anybody would care to find out more, I'll leave my business cards on the table. Thank you again for your scholarship. I'm alone with the University of Chicago, so how's Professor Mearsheimer doing these days?
He's fine. He's fine.
One of our favorite buddies.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was there
It was never performed. It was never performed in Dresden. I mean, even the opera had some rehearsal, but was never performed. And that was composed in 1943. So we had over a year in which it could have been done. I mean, they were very aware that this would not be done. Now, there were a lot of performances. There were a lot of performances. We've done a lot of work with survivors, particularly with a dear friend of ours, Alice Headstoma, who died 2 years ago, at 110. And she was the dedicatee, I think, of the fourth piano sonata, was it? I mean, she played a lot of music. They were she was also a Czech as well. So there was performance, but never. But this piece was never performed. I mean, this is the time the clock was really ticking very fast at this moment. Yeah.
It's also intended for eventual play. The piano part would be played by an orchestra. So this is basically this is an orchestra transcription essentially for the piano, which is why you saw me kind of find that because no one can possibly have 30 fingers and have a reach of 2.5 octaves. So you have to make adaptations to make it playable on the piano. But it was intended for eventually for an orchestra, for speaker and orchestra, not speaker and piano.
So,
where did you find the work? And you said it was part of your research in Basel?
so some of the work is published. Some of the Ullmann's work is published. I mean, quite a bit of it is published. There's sort of 2 different tracks of publication. He was an anthroposophist, and they control some of his publications. They're also located near Basel, Steiner, the Waldorfschule philosophy, and then and Schott publishes the German publishing house. So this music went to, basically with H.G. Adler, about whom I spoke at the beginning, went to London. And Adler's son, whose name is Jeremy, is a very distinguished scholar of German literature. Teaches at King's College London. He's a scholar. And when Victor Ullmann passed away, they made sure that this music went to this Sacher Stiftung, where Deborah and I, where she does a lot of work, and I've done a little work. And it holds manuscripts of many 20th century composers, especially. I mean, that's so I knew it was there. And that's I have a close friend who also works on Jewish music. Heidi Zimmermann is one of the chief archivists there. So we had been correspondence about this particular material. We're very happy at the reception, all in the midst of munching to
Thank the Bowmans for the performance this evening, and you might think, was there a connection to Shvat, the celebration of trees and nature, and especially the celebration of trees, because we see there are great roots of trees, and then there are great branches, and we go back in history, and then we make sure there's a future. And this actually presentation gave us a sense of looking back and being part of history, and then making sure that it exists in the future. So I thank you both for being here at Bet Shirah and for sharing this very special music. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. By the way, 3rd and 4th parts of the series for the Tu B'Shvat music series, February 28th, Fusion of Music, Civic Chorale, and 2nd Jewish Avenue Chorale. And March 8th will be Strymel, the leading klezmer company orchestra band of Canada. March 8th. Thanks, everyone.